Coming up, NFL star Jack Brewer on why America is not a racist nation. Welcome to another Real American Heroes special edition. I'm Oliver North. Our guest today, Professor Jack Brewer of the Fordham Gabelli School of Business in New York. Jack's a former NFL safety, a three-time team captain who played for the Minnesota Vikings, the New York Giants, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Arizona Cardinals. Jack's also a former investment banker, a devoted philanthropist, and served 4 years as ambassador to the U.S. Federation for Peace and Development at the United Nations. He co-hosts a digital podcast, Level-Headed, with Mike Lindell. And not last and not least, Jack's an ordained minister who dedicates his time in prisons all across America. Jack, thank you for taking time to join us today.
What an honor and a pleasure. I appreciate it, Mr. Norton.
Well, you and I have some common ground because I've got a grandfather and two uncles that graduated from the institution where you teach. So give me your take on what our nation's been going through the last several months. The COVID virus, the shutting down of the economy, and now this civil unrest and disorder and quite vandalism, all of it. Give me your take on all this.
This is unprecedented times. Spiritually, you read about these things and it seems like every day you're in a different chapter of Revelation. And I think it's really a time that Americans can take a step back. I know most of us has probably spent more time in our houses and around our family than we ever had. I know for me, I used to travel. I used to be on a plane 4 to 5 times a week. And now all of a sudden I'm stuck in my house around my kids. And so with all the negative going around us, I think, it's also a time to be aware of the positive things that we can pull out of this, the way that we can get our priorities reset as Americans. And really, for me, it's been a time for me to look at society and really see what it's become, understanding that we've removed God out of so many of our institutions, and seeing that, political divide does exist. But look how far we've come. I mean, I look at either whether it's my son's school or where he's playing, or you go to the grocery stores across the country and you see diversity everywhere. I mean, people of all races are mingling in America. Let's not forget, it didn't used to be that way. There was a time in our history where people were truly divided, not just divided by their politics and by their speech, but physically divided. And so I don't think that exists as much. I think, most Americans that are level-headed will acknowledge the fact that this nation has come a long way.
Well, look, there are those who say that there's systematic oppression in this country. You see that in some of these protests. I mean, in Washington, D.C., they're tearing down statues of just anybody on a horse, it seems like. And there's all kinds of things happening in places like Seattle. And it's not necessarily a racial divide, it's a deep political divide, and seemingly a disrespect for this country. Is that the way it looks to you?
Yeah, it's interesting because when you talk about systematic oppression, right? Folks always want to make that about race, and people always want to make that about slavery. Well, part of that is true, but the major issue with our systematic oppression is the fact that our system has been put in place to reward unions. Our system has been put in place to reward a lot of these liberal politicians and their initiatives locally. And so you talk about schools and education, and the president's talked about this quite a bit, about being a civil rights issue. So there is systematic oppression in our school systems, because when you go into a school like here in Broward County, and I see that our county spends almost $20,000 per kid per year for education. But then I can go and put my kid in a top private school for $14,000 per year. And yet, we're graduating 60 or 70% of our Black men in the private school graduates 100%. And so you see naturally there's some systematic issues, but the systematic issues don't all come because of the color of your skin. It comes because there's been misappropriation of funds in most of these liberal ran cities. in local governments. And I think we have to change the conversation to actually get to the root issues, right? We have systems put in place in America, whether it's our welfare system. Well, our welfare and entitlement systems in America disincentivize fatherhood, disincentivize the family unit, because the second a father moves into the home and the income level of the house goes up a little bit, they take that welfare away, or they take that entitlement away, instead of giving people a bridge to actually incentivize them to build strong families. 73% of kids that are Black are born out of wedlock. I know that because I've had kids out of wedlock. And so what does that do? It breaks down the family unit. It becomes more difficult for your child to be successful. You're 5 times more likely to live in poverty if you don't have a father in the home. You're almost 20 times more likely to go to prison. I mean, these things we can't deny, because when you look back at our nation and we say, okay, what's happening to these poor kids? Well, 71% of kids who are dropping out of high school don't have a father.
Right.
These are the issues that we can really address. We can address them through our policy, but we got to be brave enough to attack it. And we can't shame people like you see going across with this cancel culture. You can't shame people where they can't even talk about these issues, or you call them racist.
Well, you now hear a lot of calls for defunding or canceling police organizations around the country. I look at these defunding calls and I say, who are you going to get when you call 911 and you need help? What's your take?
You're seeing what's happening with that. The same mayors that were calling to defund or standing up against the police, causing rift in their cities. Just last weekend, there was 104 people shot in Chicago, one American city. Mr. North, you've seen battles all around the world. If you had 104 of your men shot in one day, what kind of scenario is that? And this is an American city, and so this is the result of weak leadership in these local cities. This is the result of people being lawless and not respecting police officers, and it has the end. Minneapolis. I went to school in Minnesota. I played for the Minnesota Vikings. There's been over 100 people shot in Minneapolis since George Floyd got killed. Yeah. I mean, these are numbers that people wouldn't even believe are happening in the Middle East and war-torn countries and places in Africa where they're at civil war. And so that's the reality of our streets. And so for someone to say we need less police officers or less resources put into our police officers, I'd like to ask them, are they willing to go out and protect and serve people they don't even know? Who is going to want to be a police officer in America if we continue this rhetoric?
Well, I'll tell you, there's about 30% of America's law enforcement are former military personnel. They're veterans. And I hear from a lot of them that, they were looking at doing this or going to a police academy or that kind of thing. And you're absolutely right. It's going to be really tough to recruit law enforcement officers next few years ahead. Very quickly, the NFL, you got more experience in the NFL than anybody I've talked to, and certainly recently. Give me your take on what this season's going to be like with only 30% or whatever in the stands, if it even happens. What's it going to be like?
It'll be a different atmosphere. I can't imagine playing in a half-empty stadium, but I think one good thing about it is that now, with the access to our iPads and our cell phones, people being able to stream in, I think the viewership will still increase. It's a game that America needs. Most of us, on Sundays we tune into the NFL, Monday Night Football. It's just such a part of the American culture. And right now, our country just needs it. It needs it to heal so we can get our minds off of pandemics and get our minds off of all these racial issues. I think if the NFL does it the right way, they can really help to unify this country. I just hope that it doesn't end up dividing us. And I hope that, the powers that be understand what platform God has given them. And the ability that they truly have to take folks from all demographics and bring them together around this game. We've seen it done before. And so I'm praying and hoping that, this football season is one that truly, truly unites this nation.
Jack, 50 years from now, my great-grandkids are going to be studying about this extraordinary time in history. What do you want them to know about what you did during this remarkable time?
You know what, man? If I had to write history and say, personally, I just hope that I stood for God. Stood for God during a time when spirituality was being removed from this nation, a nation that was founded under God. And I hope that everything that I do and the messages that I put out are one that align with the word of God. And hopefully this is that revolutionary period that America gets back to its real principles, and not principles of division and not principles of identity in politics, but one that unites us through one common ground, and that's that we're all one blood. Man, 99% of our DNA is the same. And Christ tells us in Acts 17:26 that we are one blood. And so if we're truly all one blood, that means we will come together as one America. And I really pray and I hope that, the future says that. And I hope that that's the way that, and I'm remembered. I hope that's the way that this nation is remembered for our kids and grandkids.
God bless you, brother. I appreciate it very much, you joining us today.
Yes, anytime, Mr. North. All the respect in the world, man. It's patriots like you that give this nation hope. Thank you.
God bless you, brother. If this broadcast has been informative, helpful, or encouraging to you, take time now to subscribe and let me know how these unprecedented events have affected you and yours. By doing so, you may become part of this historical record of how America persevered and once again prospered. Until next time, remember, Semper Fidelis is more than a slogan for U.S. Marines. Always faithful is a way of life. Now, America, press on, press on.